Have you ever wondered why some prayers seem to vanish into thin air while others manifest with miraculous speed? The difference isn't in the words you speak or how fervently you plead. It lies in something far more fundamental that most spiritual seekers completely miss. When Jesus uttered those 5 transformative words, "I and the Father are one," was he making an exclusive claim about his unique divinity? Or was he revealing the most profound spiritual truth available to every human being? This question has shaped religious thought for 2 millennia, yet its deepest implications remain hidden in plain sight. What if I told you that this single statement contains the master key to effective prayer, manifestation, healing, and spiritual awakening? Has this ever happened to you? You pray with complete sincerity, follow all the spiritual rules, yet feel as though an invisible barrier stands between you and divine connection. For decades, spiritual teacher Joel Goldsmith dedicated his life to uncovering the revolutionary implications behind Jesus' words. What he discovered challenges everything most of us have been taught about our relationship with the divine. This isn't just another spiritual concept. It's a complete paradigm shift that transforms prayer from begging to receiving, from separation to oneness. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the globe. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. The majority of spiritual seekers operate from what Goldsmith called a consciousness of separation, an ingrained belief that we stand apart from God, disconnected from divine reality. This perception creates an illusory gap that no amount of conventional prayer can bridge. We plead across this imagined chasm, wondering why our words don't reach the other side. But what if there is no gap to cross? What if the very premise of separation is the fundamental illusion blocking your spiritual realization? Stay with me until the end, because the truth behind "I and the Father are one" shatters this illusion completely, and with it transforms every aspect of your spiritual practice. Think of it this way. When you believe you're separate from God, your prayers become negotiations with an external power. You ask, you plead, you bargain, all from a position of disconnection. But what happens within when you truly grasp that you and the Father are one? Everything changes. Your prayers no longer travel outward. They awaken what already exists within your true nature. This isn't mere positive thinking or metaphorical language. What you're about to discover might surprise you because it challenges the very foundation of how most people approach spirituality. It's not about becoming worthy of connection with the divine. It's about recognizing a oneness that has never been broken. The reason most people struggle spiritually isn't because they lack faith or devotion. It's because they're operating from a consciousness that contradicts the very truth Jesus revealed. They're trying to connect with something they believe is separate from them, when the profound reality is that this separation is entirely illusory. The profound truth Jesus was revealing in those 5 words, "I and the Father are one," wasn't a special claim about his unique divinity. It was a revelation about your fundamental nature and mine. If these teachings on divine oneness resonate with your spirit, subscribe to our channel. Every video explores transformative spiritual insights that can awaken you to your true nature. Join our community of seekers who are discovering what it truly means when Jesus said, "I and the Father are one." This mindset shift changes everything. When you approach prayer, meditation, or spiritual practice from the consciousness of oneness rather than separation, you're no longer petitioning an external power. You're recognizing what already exists within your true nature. It's like the difference between begging for water while standing in the ocean versus simply opening your awareness to the abundance that surrounds you. Your journey of spiritual awakening doesn't involve connecting with something outside yourself. It's about removing the veils that obscure the connection that has always been present. The hidden truth that Joel Goldsmith uncovered through decades of contemplative practice was that prayer in its highest form isn't asking at all, it's recognition. Think of what Jesus meant when he said, "The kingdom of God is within you." This wasn't merely poetic language, it was a precise description of reality. The divine presence isn't somewhere in the distant heavens, requiring your earnest pleas to pay attention to your needs. Your divine connection is your very essence, not something to acquire through spiritual techniques or rituals. This revelation completely transforms how we understand spiritual practice. Instead of approaching God as supplicants, small, separate beings hoping to influence a greater power, we approach from the consciousness of our true identity. We recognize that divine intelligence, love, and abundance are the very fabric of our being when we clear away the illusion of separation. The impact of this understanding ripples through every aspect of life. Problems begin to dissolve, not because we've convinced God to solve them, but because we've shifted into the consciousness where solutions naturally exist. Healing occurs not because we've persuaded a distant deity to grant it, but because we've recognized the wholeness that was always our true state. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring what happens within consciousness when you truly grasp this principle. The transformation isn't just theoretical, it's a complete rewiring of how you perceive reality. When you operate from the awareness that I and the Father are one, you access levels of intelligence, creativity, and spiritual power that remain dormant in the consciousness of separation. If this understanding is beginning to resonate with something you've always sensed, but perhaps couldn't articulate, write in the comments, "I'm awakening to oneness." When we truly understand this principle of oneness, we begin to see that everything we could ever need or desire already exists in the consciousness we share with the infinite. The blueprint of your journey isn't about acquiring or achieving something external. It's about aligning your awareness with what already exists in spiritual reality. This alignment is the essence of spiritual transformation. Most people approach life's challenges from the mindset of limitation, focusing intensely on the problem itself. They analyze it, worry about it, and inadvertently anchor their consciousness in the very vibration that perpetuates the issue. It's like trying to clean muddy water by stirring it more vigorously. No matter how sincere your intentions, you remain locked in the same pattern. Joel Goldsmith's revolutionary insight was that effective spiritual work isn't about fixing problems at their own level. It's about elevating your consciousness to the realm where solutions naturally exist. Think about how different your approach becomes when you operate from this understanding. Instead of desperately trying to solve a financial crisis from a mindset of lack, you shift your awareness to the consciousness of infinite abundance that is your true nature. This isn't magical thinking or denial of practical realities. It's recognizing a higher dimension of experience that remains hidden when we're fixated on material appearances. The revelation here is that problems only exist at certain levels of consciousness. Rise above that level, and what seemed impossible suddenly reveals obvious solutions. Imagine the profound inner shift that happens when you move from hoping or wishing that you and God are connected to knowing with absolute certainty that I and the Father are one. Not as an intellectual concept or temporary emotional state, but as your fundamental identity. This knowing transforms everything because it alters the very foundation from which you perceive and interact with life. From this elevated awareness, prayer becomes something entirely different. It's no longer a petition addressed to a separate being. It's a recognition of what is eternally true in the spiritual dimension of existence. You're not trying to convince God to solve your problems. You're aligning with the consciousness where those problems don't exist in the first place. This is why so many people experience what appear to be miraculous healings, synchronicities, and transformations when they grasp this principle. The miracles don't come because they've finally found the right words to persuade God. They come because the shift in consciousness naturally aligns them with a different order of reality, one where divine harmony is the natural state. Let me share something that might illuminate this concept even further. When you observe how consciousness shapes experience in your daily life, you'll notice that the same external circumstances feel entirely different depending on your internal state. The secret is learning to anchor your awareness in the consciousness of oneness regardless of appearances. If you've ever experienced moments where you felt completely aligned with a sense of greater purpose or intelligence beyond your personal thinking, type "I've glimpsed oneness" in the comments below. Those glimpses of oneness are far more significant than most people realize. They're not just pleasant spiritual experiences. They're moments when the veil of separation temporarily thins, allowing you to experience your true nature. The question becomes, how do we transform these fleeting moments into a consistent reality? Joel Goldsmith made a profound discovery through decades of spiritual practice. He found that authentic spiritual connection isn't about projecting requests outward, but about deep, receptive listening. When you truly understand your oneness with God, prayer transforms from monologue to dialogue, or more accurately, into a receptive silence where revelation can occur. Think of it as tuning your awareness to a frequency that's always broadcasting, but rarely heard above the noise of everyday thinking. The wisdom, guidance, and insight you seek aren't external treasures to be hunted down. They're already present within the divine intelligence that is your true mind. The revelation here is that divine wisdom actually precedes your questions in spiritual reality. This insight catalyzes a complete paradigm shift in spiritual practice. Most approaches to prayer focus on speaking, asking, affirming, all forms of output, but the breakthrough occurs when we prioritize receptivity over activity. It's like the difference between frantically searching for water in the desert versus becoming still enough to hear the underground spring beneath your feet. This is precisely why Joel emphasized contemplative meditation over petitionary prayer. In the silence, something miraculous happens. When your human mind becomes quiet, when the constant chatter of thoughts, worries and plans temporarily subsides, the divine reality that has always been present can finally express itself through your awareness. The journey into this kind of meditation isn't about achieving some extraordinary mental state through sheer willpower. It's about surrendering the belief that you're separate from divine mind. It's about recognizing that your true consciousness is already one with God. This recognition doesn't require mental gymnastics or spiritual techniques. It requires letting go of the very idea that there's a gap to be bridged. You begin to experience oneness not through mental effort, but through spiritual receptivity. Your consciousness naturally becomes clear, still, and aligned with truth when you stop reinforcing the illusion of separation. It's like a pond that becomes perfectly reflective, not by trying to reflect, but by allowing its waters to become still. This receptivity represents a profound psychological reversal from how most people approach spirituality. Instead of striving to reach God through spiritual achievement, you recognize that divine presence is the foundation of your being. The only obstacle is your belief in separation, and that belief dissolves in the silence of contemplative awareness. What emerges in this silence isn't just peace or temporary relief from stress. It's a direct perception of reality that transcends intellectual understanding. You don't just think about oneness, you experience it as your actual identity. And from this experience, your entire relationship with life undergoes a radical transformation. If you've ever found that your most profound insights came not from thinking harder, but from becoming deeply quiet and receptive, share "Silence speaks truth" in the comments below. This silence reveals something profoundly transformative about the nature of problems themselves. When we truly grasp "I and the Father are one," we discover that problems don't actually dissolve because we've figured out clever solutions or forced external circumstances to change. They dissolve because we've shifted into a consciousness where we perceive the reality of oneness that was always present beneath the illusion of separation. Think about how this revelation transforms your approach to life's challenges. Most people exhaust themselves trying to manipulate conditions, convince others, or force outcomes through sheer determination. There's a fundamental misconception driving this struggle: the belief that wholeness, peace, or abundance must be created or achieved rather than recognized as already present in spiritual reality. The hidden insight that Joel Goldsmith uncovered is that most spiritual practice fails not because people aren't trying hard enough, but because they're attempting it from the wrong standpoint entirely. They're operating from the separated self, the ego that believes it is cut off from divine intelligence and must somehow bridge an imaginary gap. This perspective creates an inherent contradiction that no amount of spiritual technique can overcome. Consider how this plays out in everyday experience. When you pray from the consciousness of separation, you're essentially reinforcing the very condition you're trying to transcend. It's like trying to heal a wound by continually reopening it. The breakthrough comes when you realize there's no gap to bridge because there never was any actual separation except in human perception. This understanding reveals something revolutionary about the nature of divine reality. God is not separate from you, withholding good until you prove worthy through correct belief, perfect behavior, or spiritual achievement. The divine is not a cosmic gatekeeper deciding when to grant favors based on the sincerity of your petitions. True spiritual realization recognizes your fundamental oneness with infinite source. The intelligence, health, abundance, and love you desire are not outside you waiting to be granted as rewards for spiritual effort. They are the very nature of the consciousness you're made of when you remember I and the Father are one. This isn't metaphorical language, it's a precise description of spiritual reality. Ready to deepen your understanding of spiritual oneness? Subscribe now to access more teachings that bridge ancient wisdom with practical living. Our channel is dedicated to helping you recognize and live from the truth that you and the Father are one, not just as a concept, but as your everyday reality. The implications of this understanding ripple through every dimension of life. When you face health challenges, financial pressure, relationship difficulties, or any other problem, your work isn't to convince God to fix them. Your work is to shift into the consciousness where you recognize that wholeness is the only reality in divine mind, and divine mind is your true mind. This shift isn't about denying material appearances or pretending problems don't exist on the human level. It's about recognizing a higher dimension of reality where these conditions have no power or permanence. It's like discovering that the frightening shadow on the wall is merely a projection without substance. The shadow doesn't need to be fought or fixed. It simply dissolves when you perceive its true nature. If you've ever experienced a problem that seemed impossible to solve suddenly dissolve when your perception shifted, type "perception is everything" in the comments. That shift in perception is exactly what Jesus was in pointing to when he said, "The Father knows what you need before you ask." This statement reveals a profound truth that transforms our entire approach to prayer and spiritual practice. It means the divine is already providing, already answering, already supplying everything necessary for your wholeness before you even recognize the need. This revelation completely reverses our usual understanding of prayer. Your role isn't to inform God of your problems or convince the divine to act on your behalf. Your role is to align your awareness with the divine provision that never stops flowing, because it is your true being. This alignment happens naturally when you recognize I and the Father are one, not as a theoretical concept, but as your actual identity. The catalyst for inner transformation occurs precisely at this crossroads, the moment you shift from asking God to provide what you need to recognizing that divine fullness is already established as the reality of your being. It's like suddenly realizing you've been searching desperately for glasses that were on your head the entire time. The revelation isn't that you finally found something new. It's that what you sought was always present, simply unrecognized. Joel Goldsmith witnessed countless real-world breakthroughs when people genuinely grasped this truth. Their lives transformed not because circumstances magically changed overnight, but because their consciousness shifted from lack to completeness, from separation to oneness. Consider Maria's journey, a woman who struggled financially for years, constantly praying for money and opportunity. Despite attending every workshop, reciting every affirmation, and following every manifestation technique, her financial situation remained desperate. The turning point came when she encountered Goldsmith's teaching on oneness. Maria realized she had been operating from lack consciousness, reinforcing her separation from the infinite abundance that was her true nature. Instead of begging for supply, she began practicing contemplative meditation, not asking for anything, but simply resting in the awareness of already being one with infinite substance. Within months, opportunities appeared that had been there all along, but were invisible from her previous perspective of lack. Or consider James, who endured chronic pain for 7 years. He'd consulted countless healers and prayed desperately for relief. Each improvement was temporary, and eventually he began to believe either that God was punishing him or that he was somehow unworthy of healing. When he discovered Goldsmith's principle of oneness, everything shifted. James stopped pleading for his pain to disappear. Instead, he dedicated time each day to recognizing the spiritual perfection that was already established as his real being. He didn't deny the pain when it appeared, but he refused to give it ultimate reality in his consciousness. Gradually, not only did the physical symptoms diminish, but more importantly, his fear and identification with the condition dissolved completely. These transformations didn't come through finding better techniques to convince God to help them. They came through a fundamental shift in identity, from seeing themselves as separate beings needing divine intervention to recognizing their oneness with the infinite source of all good. This recognition isn't just about physical healing or financial abundance. It transforms every dimension of human experience because it addresses the root cause of all suffering, the belief in separation from our divine source. If you've experienced a moment when something you'd been striving for suddenly appeared, when you stopped struggling and simply opened to receive it, share "Surrender opened the way" in the comments. That surrender is at the heart of a powerful practice Joel Goldsmith taught called resting in the Word. This approach transforms how we engage with spiritual truth. When you truly understand I and the Father are one, your entire relationship with spiritual practice shifts. Instead of repeatedly asking for things or desperately affirming truths you don't yet believe, you select a spiritual principle that addresses the consciousness behind whatever problem you're facing. The key insight here is that you don't use this truth as a mental hammer, repeating it mechanically like an affirmation. Instead, you rest in it, allowing it to permeate your awareness like sunlight gradually warming and illuminating a room. You marinate in this divine reality until it becomes more real to your consciousness than the material appearance you're facing. For example, if you're dealing with financial pressure, instead of frantically affirming abundance while secretly fearing lack, you might rest in the truth that infinite substance is the nature of divine being, and divine being is your true identity. You sit with this reality, not as something to achieve, but as something to recognize and remember. This practice creates a profound psychological alchemy. The truth doesn't just remain intellectual knowledge. It penetrates the deeper levels of consciousness where transformation actually occurs. It's like the difference between memorizing facts about water versus immersing yourself in the ocean. One is information, the other is experience. Now, I want to go even deeper into another revolutionary technique Joel discovered. He called it impersonal realization, and it represents a quantum leap in spiritual practice. Most approaches to prayer and meditation remain intensely personal, focused entirely on me and my problems, my healing, my prosperity, my relationships. This personal focus actually limits what consciousness can receive because it keeps awareness small and self-centered. Impersonal realization expands your awareness beyond personal concerns to recognize that oneness with God is the truth of existence itself for everyone and everything. When you practice this approach, you're not asking for your healing but recognizing that wholeness is the nature of divine reality for all. You're not pleading for your supply, but acknowledging that infinite abundance is the truth of existence itself. This universal perspective might seem counterintuitive. How can focusing on everyone help my specific situation? The revelation is that when you rise into universal consciousness, you access a dimension where all good is already established. From that elevated awareness, your personal experience naturally reflects the universal truth you've recognized. This shift from personal to impersonal awareness catalyzes breakthroughs that remain impossible from the limited perspective of the separate self. It's like trying to move a massive boulder. Pushing against it directly with personal effort yields minimal results. But understanding the universal principles of leverage allows effortless movement. The impersonal approach doesn't mean you become detached or uncaring about your specific needs. Rather, it means you address them from a higher vantage point, from the consciousness of oneness rather than separation. This elevated perspective dissolves limitations that appear insurmountable at the personal level. If you've noticed how focusing on helping others sometimes mysteriously resolves your own challenges, type "universal flows to all" in the comments. That universal flow reveals the next evolutionary stage of spiritual unfoldment, what Joel Goldsmith called living by grace. This represents the ultimate breakthrough in consciousness. It means shifting entirely from trying to make things happen through personal effort to recognizing that divine intelligence is already being all, doing all, and expressing all through you. When you truly grasp, I and the Father are one, you stop seeing yourself as a human being occasionally connecting with God and start recognizing yourself as divine consciousness having a human experience. This perspective shift creates a complete revolution in how you approach every dimension of life. Living by grace means you no longer wake up wondering how to force the day to unfold according to your plans. Instead, you wake with the awareness that infinite intelligence is already orchestrating your day with wisdom far beyond your personal planning. You stop trying to get God to act and start acknowledging the divine action that never ceases because you and the Father truly are one. This milestone on your spiritual journey doesn't mean you become passive or abdicate responsibility. Rather, you discover what true responsibility looks like. The ability to respond from oneness rather than separation, from wholeness rather than lack. You still take practical steps and make decisions, but these actions flow from a different source. Not from anxiety and control, but from inspiration and guidance. The revelation at the heart of living by grace is that you're not a human entity struggling to connect with divine power. You're an individualization of that power itself, having temporarily forgotten your true identity. The awakening process isn't about becoming something new. It's about remembering what you've always been. Consider how this understanding transforms your daily experience. Challenges still appear in your human journey, but you meet them from an entirely different foundation. Instead of reacting from fear or limitation, you respond from the awareness of your divine identity, which transcends every material restriction. Problems that once seemed overwhelming now appear as opportunities to demonstrate the truth of oneness in practical experience. This doesn't mean life becomes perfectly smooth or that difficulties magically disappear. What changes is your relationship to these experiences. You no longer see them as evidence of separation from good, but as temporary appearances that have no power to define your true being. You meet each situation from the unshakable foundation of knowing I and the Father are one. The practical effects of this consciousness shift, ripple through every dimension of life. Decisions that once caused anxiety now flow naturally from inner guidance. Relationships transform as you begin to recognize the same divine presence expressing through others that expresses through you. Work becomes not just a means of earning money, but a channel for divine creativity to flow into visible expression. This is the promise hidden within Jesus' words, not that we should worship him as uniquely divine, but that we should recognize in ourselves the same oneness with God that he demonstrated. When you truly understand I and the Father are one, as Jesus and Joel Goldsmith taught it, your entire relationship with reality undergoes a metamorphosis more profound than any external achievement could ever create. If you're beginning to sense that this teaching speaks to something you've always known deep within but perhaps couldn't articulate, write, "The oneness was always there" in the comments. As we bring this exploration to a close, I'm reminded that the teachings of Jesus and Joel Goldsmith aren't just philosophical concepts. They're invitations to a completely transformed experience of reality. The truth that I and the Father are one isn't something to simply believe in, but something to live from. It's a truth that has the power to dissolve problems, heal relationships, and reveal the limitless good that's already present in your life. If these ideas have resonated with you today, I'd love for you to be part of this ongoing conversation. Subscribe to join our spiritual community where we explore these profound truths each week. The insights I share aren't theoretical, they're practical wisdom that can transform how you experience every dimension of life. I've poured my heart into creating this content because I know firsthand how understanding these principles can completely reshape your journey. If you found value in today's message, a simple like lets me know these teachings are reaching the right people. And if this message spoke directly to your soul today, if you felt something stir within you as we explored the truth of your divine identity, leave a comment with the words, "This awakening was meant for me." I read every comment and love connecting with those who are walking this path. There's a video right here that explores how to apply this principle of oneness to heal relationships in your life. Click and continue with me over there as we take these teachings even deeper into practical application.
For 2,000 years, humanity has read, "In the beginning was the Word," without grasping its true power. This isn't poetry or religious metaphor. Joel Goldsmith discovered this is the actual creative principle that governs all manifestation, healing, and transformation in your life right now. What you're about to learn changes everything you thought you knew about reality. Most people believe words are just sounds or symbols on paper. They think reality exists independently, and words merely describe it. This fundamental misunderstanding keeps millions trapped in limitation, disease, and struggle. The mystics knew differently. They understood that word, or consciousness, is the very substance from which all things are formed and maintained. Here's the revelation that transformed Joel's ministry. The word isn't something God spoke once long ago. The word is the eternal creative activity of consciousness happening right now in you. When you truly comprehend this, you hold the key to healing any condition and manifesting your highest good. Not through effort or manipulation, but through recognition. Think about what this means for your life today. Every circumstance you face, every condition in your body, every relationship, every financial situation exists first as consciousness before it appears as form. The word you're holding in awareness is creating your experience moment by moment. Change the word, transform the consciousness, and reality must shift. Joel Goldsmith spent decades in deep meditation before this mystery revealed itself completely. He watched as students who grasped this principle experienced healings that medical science called impossible. Financial lack dissolved, relationships healed. But those who treated it as mere philosophy saw no change. The difference. One group recognized consciousness as substance itself. Think about your body right now. You've been taught it's solid matter, separate from your thoughts. Yet every cell responds instantly to your consciousness. Fear contracts it. Peace expands it. Your word, your consciousness, is literally forming your physical experience moment by moment. This isn't metaphysical theory but observable fact. The revelation deepens. There's only one consciousness, one word. What appears as your individual mind is actually the infinite expressing as you. When you speak from this recognition, you're not trying to change reality. You're recognizing what's already true in the realm of spirit, and that recognition manifests as form. Joel discovered that most spiritual teaching gets this backwards. People try to use their mind to manipulate consciousness, to force reality to conform to their desires. But consciousness doesn't work for you. Consciousness is what you are. The word isn't a tool you use. The word is your very being expressing itself as your world. Let me show you how this works practically. A woman came to Joel paralyzed with fear about her child's diagnosis. Instead of treating the disease, Joel helped her recognize the truth. In the beginning was the Word. The child's true being existed in perfect consciousness before any physical condition appeared. That spiritual reality was the actual truth. As she sat in meditation, something shifted in her awareness. She stopped seeing a sick child and recognized the eternal Word made flesh, whole, and complete. Within days, symptoms began disappearing. The doctors were baffled. She understood. She hadn't healed her child through mental power. She'd recognized what was already true in consciousness. This is radically different from positive thinking or affirmations. You're not trying to create something new or change what is. You're recognizing the eternal Word, the spiritual reality that precedes and governs all material appearance. When your consciousness rests in this recognition, the outer conforms to the inner truth you're perceiving. The woman practiced this daily for weeks. Some days the symptoms seemed worse and doubt crept in. But Joel taught her, appearances are temporary. The Word is eternal. Keep recognizing truth regardless of what the senses report. She persisted, and complete healing manifested. This is the power of sustained recognition. Here's what Joel discovered that most spiritual teachers miss. The Word operates whether you're conscious of it or not. Your current life conditions are the Word you've been speaking through your consciousness. Lack, disease, discord. These reveal a consciousness accepting material sense as power. They're showing you where you've forgotten the Word. But this isn't about blame or guilt. It's about power. The moment you recognize that consciousness is the creative Word, you can shift from unconscious creation to conscious recognition of truth. You're not at the mercy of circumstances. You're the very presence of the Word, taking form as your experience right now. The secret Joel emphasized repeatedly: don't try to use this principle to get something. That still operates from the belief that you lack. Instead, recognize that the word which was in the beginning is expressing as you now, complete and whole. From that recognition, all things are added. This is the mystery finally revealed. Joel would sit with students and ask them, "What word are you speaking about your life right now? Not with your mouth, but with your consciousness. What are you recognizing as true? Whatever you're holding in awareness as truth is the word creating your experience." This understanding gives you complete responsibility and complete freedom. A businessman attended Joel's class, drowning in debt, watching his company crumble. He'd tried every success technique, every positive affirmation. Nothing worked because he was still operating from the belief that he needed to create abundance. Joel taught him something completely different. Recognize that the word, infinite consciousness, was already expressing as his business. For 3 weeks, he sat daily in meditation, not asking for anything, not trying to change conditions. He simply recognized, my business exists in the word, in consciousness, where supply is infinite. I'm not creating prosperity. I'm recognizing what's already true in the spiritual realm. His only job was staying conscious of this truth. The shift happened gradually, then suddenly. An unexpected investor appeared. Clients returned. Debts resolved through channels he never imagined. He didn't attract these things through mental power. His consciousness, resting in truth, naturally manifested as harmonious outer conditions. The word became flesh in his experience because he'd recognized it in consciousness first. Joel explained to him later, "You didn't make anything happen. You simply stopped blocking the natural flow of good by recognizing what was already true. Consciousness always expresses its nature. When your consciousness rests in truth of infinite supply, that truth must appear as your experience. This is law, not hope." Joel worked with a woman whose marriage was ending in bitterness and conflict. She wanted him to help her change her husband, make him more loving and understanding. Instead, Joel revealed something that initially frustrated her. Her husband, in truth, was the Word made manifest. His eternal spiritual identity was perfect, whole, complete. She protested that this wasn't her experience. Joel gently explained that her experience was reflecting her consciousness, not the truth. Every time she saw her husband as flawed, angry, or distant, she was speaking that word into manifestation. The word she held in consciousness about him was creating what she experienced. It took months of practice, but she learned to see past behavior to the spiritual reality. When he was angry, she silently recognized, this isn't the truth of who you are. In consciousness, you are the perfect Word made flesh. Slowly, their relationship transformed. He softened. Communication opened. She discovered that seeing truth in consciousness about another is the highest form of love. The breakthrough came when she realized she'd been trying to change her husband instead of recognizing him. Joel taught her, you can't change anyone. But when you see them as they truly are in consciousness, that recognition creates space for their own truth to emerge. Your word about them is more powerful than their temporary behavior. A young man came to Joel with chronic pain that doctors couldn't explain or relieve. Joel asked him a startling question. What word are you holding in consciousness about your body? The man didn't understand. Joel explained, your body is the Word made flesh. It's consciousness taking form. The pain reflects a word of belief in material limitation. Joel taught him to sit in silence and recognize a different truth. In the beginning, before this pain, before this body took form, there was the Word. My true body exists in that Word, in consciousness, where there is no pain, no limitation, no disease. That's my reality. This physical sensation is showing me where I've believed in matter as power. The practice wasn't about denying his pain or pretending it didn't hurt. It was about recognizing a deeper truth beneath the appearance. As he practiced daily, recognizing his body as consciousness rather than matter, the pain began releasing. Not through fighting it, but through recognizing it never touched his true being, which existed eternally in the Word. After 6 weeks of practice, the pain disappeared completely. But something more profound happened. He lost his fear of the body. He understood that his true identity existed in consciousness, untouched by physical conditions. Even if pain returned, he knew it wasn't his reality. This freedom from fear was the real healing. Here's what these stories reveal. The word isn't something you speak with your mouth. It's the consciousness you hold, the recognition you maintain, the truth you rest in. Every condition in your life is showing you what word, what consciousness you've been holding about it. This is powerful because it means you're never a victim of circumstances. When you recognize that consciousness is the creative word, you stop trying to change effects and start recognizing cause. You stop battling conditions and start resting in truth. The physical realm must conform to what you're recognizing in consciousness because consciousness is the substance, the word from which all form manifests. Joel proved this thousands of times, not through wishful thinking or manipulation, but through recognition of what's eternally true in the realm of spirit. The word that was in the beginning is still speaking, still creating, still manifesting right now through your consciousness. That's the mystery revealed. Each person who discovered this truth experienced the same awakening. They'd been living backwards, trying to fix effects while ignoring cause. Once they turned to consciousness, recognizing truth there first, their outer world had no choice but to conform. This is the principle that governs all manifestation. If these transformation stories inspire you, like this video to help others find these teachings, subscribe for more Joel Goldsmith wisdom, and comment. What healing journey resonated most with you? Now let's explore the practical technique Joel taught for living from this word consciousness daily. He called it the practice of recognition. Every morning before engaging with the world, sit quietly and recognize everything I will encounter today already exists in consciousness, in the word, perfect and complete. I'm not going out to face problems, but to witness spirit manifesting. This is an affirmation or visualization. You're not trying to create a good day. You're recognizing what's already true in the realm of consciousness before material appearance. Joel emphasized that 5 minutes of true recognition is worth hours of mental struggle and planning. Why? Because you're aligning with the creative word itself. Throughout your day, when challenges appear, pause and ask, what is the word, the consciousness truth about this situation? If it's financial pressure, recognize, infinite supply exists in consciousness now. If it's relationship tension, recognize, this person is the word made manifest, whole and perfect in truth. You're training yourself to see past appearance to reality. Joel practiced this so consistently that it became automatic. In the middle of chaos, he would inwardly recognize truth. His students watched him remain peaceful while handling crises that would shatter others. He wasn't suppressing emotion or pretending problems didn't exist. He was simply resting in the word while appearances played out. Joel taught a complementary practice he called listening for the word. Most people's minds are filled with constant mental chatter, plans, worries, and opinions. This noise drowns out the still small voice of truth. The word is always speaking in consciousness, but you must become still enough to hear it. Set aside time daily to sit in complete silence, not asking for anything, not trying to figure anything out. Just listen. Wait. Be receptive. Joel discovered that in this deep listening, truth would arise spontaneously, not words you think up, but recognition that simply appears in your awareness. This is the word speaking itself through your consciousness. Many of Joel's most profound healings came when he stopped trying to know what to do and simply listened until truth revealed itself. A woman's cancer, a man's addiction, a child's trauma. In each case, the word spoke its truth into Joel's consciousness, and that recognition manifested as healing. You have access to this same source. The key is patience. Most people sit for 30 seconds and give up because nothing happens. Joel would sit for an hour or more, just listening, just being receptive. Eventually, truth would rise like a spring from deep within consciousness. That truth, recognized and rested in, would then appear as healing in the outer world. Another powerful technique, Joel taught his students to practice recognition on ordinary things before tackling major challenges. Look at a tree and recognize, this isn't matter. This is consciousness taking form, the word made visible. Feel the shift in your perception? You're seeing past material appearance to spiritual reality. Practice with everything. Your food isn't dead matter, but consciousness nourishing consciousness. Your home isn't just physical structure, but the word expressing as shelter and harmony. Your body isn't biological machinery, but infinite consciousness taking form. This practice trains you to live from word consciousness rather than material sense. As this becomes natural, you'll find yourself automatically recognizing truth in challenging moments. Someone cuts you off in traffic, and before anger rises, you recognize that driver is consciousness, the word made flesh, even if their behavior doesn't show it. This instant recognition prevents discord from taking root in your experience. Joel called this developing spiritual vision. You begin to see through material appearance to the spiritual reality beneath everything. A sick person isn't just a body with disease, their consciousness temporarily believing in material limitation. A wealthy person isn't just someone with money, their consciousness recognizing its own infinite nature. Everything becomes transparent to truth. Joel's final complementary practice was what he called dwelling in the secret place. This means maintaining an inner awareness of truth, even while functioning in the outer world. You're having a conversation, but inwardly you're conscious. This entire interaction is taking place in the word, in consciousness. There's no separation. You're working at your job, but you're inwardly aware. This isn't just employment. This is the word expressing as my purpose and supply. Every person you interact with becomes an opportunity to recognize truth beneath appearance. Every situation becomes a chance to rest in consciousness, rather than react to conditions. This isn't split attention or mental exhaustion. It's the most natural state of being, because you're living from your true nature as consciousness itself. Joel lived this way constantly in his later years. People felt peace just being near him because he was resting in the Word. This is available to you through practice and recognition. Students would ask Joel how he maintained this awareness constantly. He explained, "It's like breathing. At first, you must consciously remember, but with practice, it becomes your natural state. You're no more aware of consciously recognizing truth than you are of consciously breathing. It's simply how you live." But let's be honest about the challenges you'll face practicing this. The biggest obstacle Joel identified is the hypnosis of material sense. You've been conditioned since birth to believe the physical world is primary reality, and consciousness is just something happening inside your head. Reversing this perception takes time and patience. You'll sit in meditation recognizing truth, then open your eyes and physical appearance seems more real than consciousness. Your bank account looks empty despite recognizing infinite supply. Your body still hurts despite recognizing perfect spiritual wholeness. This is where most people give up, thinking the principle doesn't work. Joel was clear. The appearance doesn't immediately dissolve because you've recognized truth once. Material sense has momentum built over years of belief. Your job isn't to make appearance change. Your job is to continue recognizing truth regardless of appearance. As consciousness shifts permanently, appearance must eventually conform. He would tell students, "You didn't create your current conditions overnight. They're the accumulated result of years of consciousness. Don't expect them to vanish instantly when you begin recognizing truth. But know this with certainty. Every moment of recognition is shifting consciousness. The outer world has no choice but to eventually reflect that shift." Another challenge is the temptation to use this principle for personal gain. You learn that consciousness creates experience, and immediately you want to use it to get things: money, relationships, health, success. Joel warned this approach always fails because it still operates from the belief in lack and separation. The word doesn't work through manipulation or mental force. It works through recognition and rest. When you try to use consciousness to get something, you're affirming you don't have it. You're speaking a word of lack even while trying to create abundance. The very effort blocks the natural flow of good from consciousness into manifestation. Joel taught instead, recognize that the word contains all things within itself. You're not trying to add something to consciousness. You're recognizing what's already complete and whole. From that recognition of fullness, abundance naturally manifests, not because you made it happen, but because consciousness expressing as form is its nature. This is perhaps the subtlest point to grasp. You must want nothing while recognizing everything. You must desire nothing while acknowledging that all good already exists in consciousness. It's a state of resting in fullness rather than reaching for lack. Most people struggle with this for months before understanding it experientially. Many students struggle with maintaining recognition when facing medical diagnoses or financial crises. The appearance seems so real, so urgent, so overwhelming. How do you recognize perfect health in consciousness when pain screams through your body? How do you recognize infinite supply when creditors are calling? Joel's answer: start where you are, but don't stay there. Acknowledge the appearance without giving it power. Yes, the body seems to hurt. Yes, the bank account seems empty. But these are effects, not cause. They're showing you the consciousness you've been holding, not the truth of your being in the Word. Then make the shift. What's true in consciousness right now, regardless of appearance? The Word that was in the beginning is still expressing as me, whole and complete. I rest in that truth. I don't deny the appearance, but I no longer accept it as my reality. My reality exists in consciousness, where all is already perfect. Joel worked with a man facing bankruptcy who practiced this daily for 3 months while conditions seemed to worsen. He wanted to quit, convinced it wasn't working. Joel told him, "The darkest hour comes before dawn. Your consciousness is shifting even when appearance suggests otherwise. Trust the principle." Within 2 weeks, an unexpected solution emerged. The final major challenge is patience and persistence. Joel worked with some students for months or even years before major breakthroughs occurred. Others experienced rapid transformation. The difference wasn't in the principle or in Joel's teaching. It was in how consistently students maintained their recognition of truth versus slipping back into material sense. You might practice recognition beautifully for weeks, then hit a crisis and completely forget everything you've learned. You're back in fear, struggle, and material sense before you realize what happened. Joel said, "This is normal. Don't condemn yourself. The moment you realize you've slipped into material sense, gently return to truth." Each time you return to recognition, you're strengthening your consciousness. Each time you choose truth over appearance, you're building spiritual muscle. Eventually, recognition becomes more natural than reaction. You find yourself automatically resting in word consciousness. This is when your outer experience transforms permanently. Joel compared it to learning any skill. At first, every action requires conscious effort and feels awkward. With practice, it becomes natural and effortless. Recognizing truth as your primary reality works the same way. Be patient with yourself. Every moment of practice counts, even when results aren't yet visible. If these challenge-breaking techniques speak to your heart, like to support this content, subscribe for advanced spiritual practices, and comment, which obstacle are you ready to transform now? Let's explore how this word consciousness operates in advanced real-life scenarios. Joel worked with a corporate executive facing a hostile takeover of her company. Everything in the material realm suggested complete loss. Her position, her team's jobs, years of work. Traditional business strategy offered no solutions. Joel taught her something radical. This entire situation exists first in consciousness before it appears in boardrooms and legal documents. The outcome isn't being determined by market forces or corporate power. It's being determined by the word, the consciousness being held about this company by everyone involved. She began a daily practice of recognizing truth. This company exists in the Word, in divine consciousness, where it has perfect right place and purpose. I don't know what form that will take, but I recognize the spiritual reality beneath this appearance. She held this recognition while still taking practical business actions, but without fear or attachment to specific outcomes. Joel emphasized this critical point. Spiritual practice doesn't replace practical action. You still show up, still strategize, still do your part. But you're acting from consciousness of truth rather than fear of loss. Your actions carry a different energy when they flow from recognition rather than desperation. Over 3 months, something shifted. The acquiring company's financing fell through unexpectedly. New partnerships emerged from unlikely sources. Her board united instead of fracturing. The situation resolved in ways no one predicted, leaving the company stronger than before. She understood. She hadn't manipulated outcomes. She'd maintained consciousness of truth while appearances suggested disaster. Joel emphasized this point. Recognizing truth doesn't mean you stop taking practical action. You still show up for the business meeting, see the doctor, pay your bills. But you're taking action from consciousness of truth rather than fear of appearance. Your actions flow from recognition of wholeness rather than belief in lack. This is the advanced practice, living fully in the world while resting completely in truth. You're engaged with material affairs but not hypnotized by them. You handle challenges with wisdom and practicality, while inwardly recognizing the word that governs all. This is being in the world but not of it. She later told Joel that the most profound shift wasn't in the outer circumstances but in her inner peace throughout the crisis. She discovered that her well-being didn't depend on outcomes. Her reality existed in consciousness, untouched by material conditions. This freedom was worth more than saving the company. Joel worked with parents whose teenage son had become involved with drugs in dangerous situations. Every conventional approach had failed. The parents were desperate, terrified, exhausted from trying to control and fix their child. Joel showed them they'd been operating from consciousness of fear and lack rather than recognition of truth. He taught them the most difficult practice, seeing their son as the Word made manifest, perfect in his spiritual identity regardless of current behavior. Every time fear arose, they were to recognize, "My son exists in consciousness whole, complete, guided by infinite wisdom. I release my fear and rest in truth." This wasn't denial or passive acceptance of destructive behavior. They still set boundaries and sought appropriate help, but they did so from recognition rather than fear. Within 6 months, their son chose recovery. He later told them he'd felt something shift in their energy toward him, as if they suddenly saw who he really was beneath his actions. The mother shared that this practice transformed her more than it changed her son. She'd been living in constant anxiety, trying to control circumstances through worry and effort. Learning to rest in truth while he struggled freed her from years of self-imposed suffering. She discovered peace regardless of his choices. The profound lesson here: when you recognize truth about another person, you're not trying to change them. You're seeing past their temporary behavior to their eternal reality and consciousness. That recognition creates space for their own truth to emerge. Your word of truth about them speaks more powerfully than any words of judgment or fear. Joel proved this in countless relationships: marriages on the brink of divorce, parent-child conflicts, business partnerships in chaos. The transformation always began when one person stopped seeing the other through material sense and began recognizing their spiritual reality in the Word. Behavior might take time to change, but consciousness shifted immediately. This is advanced application because it requires you to maintain recognition even when appearance contradicts it completely. You see evidence of failure, but you recognize success in consciousness. You witness disease, but you acknowledge wholeness in truth. You observe lack, but you rest in infinite abundance. This is living from the Word rather than from the world. Joel would remind students, "You're not responsible for changing anyone. You're only responsible for what you recognize as true in consciousness." When you consistently hold truth about another, you've done your spiritual work. What manifests from that recognition is between them and the Word. Release attachment to outcomes and simply rest in truth. Now we arrive at the ultimate transformation Joel's teaching offers: recognizing yourself as the Word. Not that you have consciousness or use consciousness, but that you are consciousness expressing in form. The Word that was in the beginning is what you are right now, eternally, unchangeably. This recognition dissolves the illusion of separation that causes all suffering. You're not a limited person trying to connect with infinite consciousness. You are infinite consciousness temporarily focused as individual expression. Everything you've sought exists within your own being, because you and the Word are one. Joel called this the ultimate secret. When you recognize your true identity as consciousness itself, every question about how to heal, how to manifest, how to overcome dissolves. There's no technique needed because you're recognizing you already are what you sought. The Word needs nothing, lacks nothing, fears nothing. This isn't intellectual understanding but direct recognition. It happens in a moment of deep meditation when the personal sense of self drops away and you experience yourself as pure consciousness. Joel experienced this and spent the rest of his life helping others to the same recognition. This is the goal of all spiritual practice. This isn't arrogance or ego inflation. It's the opposite. Your personal sense of self, with all its limitations and struggles, is revealed as the false identity you've been defending. The true you, the word expressing as your being, is vast, free, and complete. Recognizing this brings profound humility because you realize you of yourself can do nothing. The word does all. Living from this recognition, your entire relationship with life transforms. You're no longer trying to get, achieve, become, or overcome. You're simply being what you already are, and watching that consciousness express as your experience. Challenges still appear, but you're not shaken because you know they're temporary appearances, not truth. Joel lived his final years in this consciousness. People who knew him described a man completely at peace, utterly free from concern about material conditions, yet fully engaged with life. He'd discovered what he taught. I and the Word are one. Everything the Word is, I am. This is your destiny too. Students would ask how to reach this state. Joel's answer was always the same. You can't reach what you already are. You can only recognize it. Stop trying to become something and simply be still until truth reveals itself. The word you are seeking is what's seeking through you. The practical application of this ultimate recognition changes how you approach every moment. You wake up knowing you're not a person who has consciousness. You are consciousness appearing as a person. This immediately removes the burden of trying to fix, change, or improve yourself. The word is already perfect. Throughout your day, when challenges arise, you recognize this is consciousness experiencing itself, learning, expanding, expressing. There's no separate you who must handle this situation. The word that created the challenge contains its own resolution. You rest in that recognition and watch truth unfold. In relationships, you recognize, I'm not an isolated individual trying to connect with other isolated individuals. We are all the one word appearing as many expressions. This dissolves loneliness, fear, and conflict at their root. How can consciousness be threatened by or separated from itself? It can't. Joel taught that from this recognition, life becomes effortless. Not that you do nothing, but that you're no longer carrying the burden of personal responsibility. The word moves through you, acts through you, lives through you. You become a transparent witness to consciousness expressing itself as your life. Here's what Joel's life demonstrated as final proof. When you live as the word made conscious of itself, your very presence becomes healing. You don't try to heal anyone. Your consciousness of truth radiates naturally, and others sense it, respond to it, are transformed by it without you doing anything. This is the destiny awaiting you through this practice. Not that you'll become special or elevated, but that you'll recognize what you've always been, the word expressing as your unique form. From that recognition, all things flow naturally. Healing, abundance, harmony, wisdom. They're not added to you. They're revealed as already present in your consciousness. The mystery of in the beginning was the word is finally clear. It wasn't describing something that happened long ago. It's describing what's happening right now as you. You are the word reading these words, recognizing truth, awakening to your true nature. Begin living from this recognition today and watch your entire world transform. Joel's final message to his students was simple but profound. You are not in the word. The word is what you are. Stop seeking and start being. Stop trying and start recognizing. Stop becoming and start knowing. The word you are has been speaking your world into existence all along. Now speak consciously, recognize deliberately, and rest in the truth of your being. If your spiritual understanding expanded through these Joel Goldsmith secrets, like this video, subscribe for more transformative teachings, and comment, I am transformed, to confirm your new path.
The secret that changes everything. Picture this. Two people wake up in the same city, on the same morning, to face remarkably similar circumstances. One opens their eyes filled with dread, their first thought, not another day of this. The other opens their eyes with anticipation, thinking, I wonder what today will bring. Same city, same weather, same economic conditions, but two completely different experiences of life. What makes the difference? It's not their circumstances, it's not their past, it's not even their present situation. The difference lies in something far more powerful, something hidden inside that most people never discover. It's the transformative power of a renewed mind. The Apostle Paul, writing to the church in Rome nearly 2,000 years ago, revealed this hidden power in one of the most profound verses in all of Scripture. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing and perfect will. Romans 12:2. In this single verse lies a secret that can revolutionize your life. Not just improve it slightly, not just make things a bit better, transform it completely. But here's what most people miss. Transformation doesn't begin with change. Your circumstances, your relationships, your job, or even your behavior. Transformation begins in a place that's invisible to the naked eye, but more powerful than anything else in your life, your mind. Today, we're going to uncover this hidden power. We're going to explore what it really means to renew your mind, why it's the key to every other change you want to see in your life, and most importantly, how to actually do it. Because knowing about this power isn't enough. You need to activate it. The problem: living in default mode. Before we can understand the power of a renewed mind, we need to recognize the problem. And the problem is this: most people are living their lives in default mode, unconsciously conforming to patterns that were never meant for them. Paul's warning to not conform to the pattern of this world isn't just spiritual advice, it's a description of the most common trap in human existence. Conformity happens so subtly that you don't even notice it's happening. It starts early. From childhood, we absorb patterns of thinking from our environment, from our families, our culture, our media, our experiences. These patterns become the default settings of our mind. Think about it like this: when you buy a new phone or computer, it comes with default settings. Someone else decided what your wallpaper would be, how your notifications work, what apps are pre-installed. Most people just accept these defaults and never change them. The same thing happens with your mind. You inherit default thought patterns, and unless you intentionally intervene, those patterns control your life. These default patterns sound like this: that's just how I am. I could never do that. People like me don't succeed. I'm not smart enough, talented enough, worthy enough. Life is hard and then you die. You can't trust anyone. I'll never get ahead. These are the patterns of this world, patterns of limitation, fear, cynicism, and defeat. Here's the sobering truth: your life right now is largely a printout of your dominant thought patterns. If you don't like what you're seeing in your life, your relationships, your progress, your peace of mind, your impact, you need to look at what's happening in your mind. The external is always a reflection of the internal. The problem intensifies because these thought patterns don't just affect how you feel, they affect what you do. Your thoughts create your beliefs. Your beliefs drive your actions. Your actions produce your results. And your results reinforce your thoughts, creating a cycle that becomes a prison. You end up living a life that's smaller than the one you were designed for, not because you lack potential, but because you're operating with the wrong mental programming. Living in default mode means living reactively instead of intentionally. It means being pushed around by circumstances rather than being directed by purpose. It means settling for conformity when you were made for transformation. And the tragedy is that most people go through their entire lives never realizing there's another way. The world has patterns of thinking about success, about relationships, about money, about purpose, about identity. And unless you actively resist these patterns, you'll unconsciously absorb them. You'll live according to scripts written by others, never discovering the unique story you were meant to write. But here's the good news: you don't have to stay in default mode. There's a power inside you, a hidden power that can break these patterns and create new ones. It's the power of mental renewal, and it's available to you right now. Understanding the power of the mind to grasp the magnitude of what Paul is talking about when he speaks of renewing the mind, we need to understand just how powerful the mind actually is. This isn't just motivational fluff. This is both biblical truth and scientific reality. From a biblical perspective, the mind occupies a place of supreme importance. Proverbs 23:7 tells us that as a person thinks in their heart, so they are, not as they hope to be, not as they pretend to be. As they think, so they are. Jesus himself said that it's not what goes into a person that defiles them, but what comes out. And what comes out is determined by what's happening in the heart and mind. Throughout Scripture, we see this emphasis repeated: set your minds on things above. Take every thought captive. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. Be renewed in the spirit of your minds. The Bible treats the mind as the control center of human experience. Change happens from the inside out, never the outside in. Now here's where it gets fascinating. Modern neuroscience has discovered something that validates what the Bible has been saying all along. It's called neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections throughout life. For decades, scientists believed the brain was fixed and unchangeable after childhood. They were wrong. Research now shows that your brain is remarkably moldable. Every thought you think, every belief you hold, every mental pattern you repeat creates neural pathways in your brain. The more you think certain thoughts, the stronger those pathways become, until they become highways of automatic thinking. This is why changing your thinking can feel so difficult at first. You're literally trying to forge new paths through dense forest while old superhighways already exist. But here's the empowering part. Those new paths can become highways too, with consistent effort. New thought patterns can become just as automatic as old ones. You can literally rewire your brain by changing your thinking. This isn't metaphorical. It's biological reality. The mind also has another incredible power. It's a filter for reality. Two people can experience the exact same event and have completely different experiences based on how their minds interpret it. Your mind determines what you notice, what you ignore, what you magnify, and what you minimize. It's not just passive observation. It's active creation of your experienced reality. This is why two people can grow up in similar circumstances and end up in radically different places. It's why some people overcome tremendous obstacles while others are defeated by minor setbacks. It's why some people find joy in simple things while others remain miserable despite abundance. The difference is mental. Your mind is also the bridge between the spiritual and the physical. It's where divine truth meets daily life. It's where God's word transforms into your walk. It's where eternal principles become temporal practices. When God wants to change your life, He starts with your mind. When the enemy wants to destroy your life, he starts with your mind. The battle for your destiny is fought on the battlefield of your thoughts. Understanding this power is crucial because it helps you see why renewing your mind isn't optional, it's essential. If your mind is this powerful, if it's this central to everything you experience and become, then letting it operate on default settings is the most dangerous thing you can do. You wouldn't leave the steering wheel of your car to chance. Why would you leave the steering of your mind to autopilot? What renewing your mind really means now that we understand the power of the mind, let's dig deeper into what Paul actually means when he talks about renewing your mind, because this phrase is so familiar that we can miss its revolutionary implication. The Greek word Paul uses for renewing is anakainosis. It means a complete renovation, not just a minor update. It's not about acquiring more information. It's not about trying harder with the same old thinking. It's about a fundamental transformation in how your mind operates. Think renovation, not decoration. Think metamorphosis, not modification. The renewing of your mind means replacing old patterns with new ones, toxic thoughts with truth, limiting beliefs with liberating ones. It means developing a completely new way of perceiving reality, seeing things not as the world sees them, but as God sees them. It means thinking thoughts that align with heaven's perspective rather than earth's pessimism. This renewal is the mechanism of transformation. Notice that Paul doesn't say, be transformed by trying harder, or be transformed by changing your circumstances. He says, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. The transformation you long for in your character, your relationships, your habits, your impact, all of it flows from this source. Mental renewal isn't one option among many for personal change. It's the engine that drives all lasting change. Here's a crucial distinction: transformation versus information. Many people accumulate biblical knowledge without experiencing biblical transformation. They can quote scripture but still live defeated lives. They know truth intellectually but haven't let it renovate their minds. Information alone doesn't transform. Renewed thinking transforms. Renewing your mind also means this is a process, not a one-time event. Paul uses a present tense verb. It's continuous action. You're not renewed once and done. You're in an ongoing process of renewal. Why? Because the world is constantly trying to press you into its mold. Culture is constantly broadcasting its patterns. Your old default settings are constantly trying to reassert themselves. So renewal must be continuous. Think of it like physical fitness. You don't work out once and stay fit forever. You must consistently engage in the practices that maintain and build strength. Similarly, you don't renew your mind once. You engage in consistent practices that maintain and deepen that renewal. It's daily, it's intentional, it's lifelong. What does renewed thinking look like practically? It looks like shifting from I can't to God can through me. It looks like shifting from I'm stuck to I'm being transformed. It looks like viewing challenges as opportunities rather than obstacles. It looks like seeing yourself as God sees you rather than as your past defines you. It looks like responding to situations based on eternal truth rather than temporary emotion. Renewed thinking doesn't deny reality, it reframes it. It doesn't ignore problems, it approaches them with God's perspective. It doesn't eliminate emotions, it prevents emotions from becoming dictators. A renewed mind is grounded in truth, governed by the Spirit, and oriented toward God's purposes. The end goal of renewed thinking, according to Paul, is that you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will. When your mind is renewed, you gain spiritual discernment. You can recognize God's direction. You can distinguish between good opportunities and God opportunities. You can make decisions that align with your divine purpose. Clarity comes from a renewed mind. The hidden power unleashed. So what actually happens when you commit to renewing your mind? What changes? What becomes possible that wasn't before? This is where the hidden power is unleashed, and the results are nothing short of remarkable. First, you experience internal transformation that leads to external change. When your thinking changes, your life follows. Those destructive habits you couldn't break, they lose their grip when you renew the thoughts that fed them. Those goals you couldn't reach, they become achievable when you eliminate the limiting beliefs that blocked them. The person you couldn't become, you start becoming them as your self-concept aligns with God's truth about you. Consider how this works in specific areas. In relationships, renewed thinking shifts you from judgment to grace, from selfishness to generosity, from reacting to responding. You stop trying to change others and start letting God change you. You release resentments because you think differently about forgiveness. You attract different people because you've become a different person. In your work and calling, renewed thinking helps you see your job as mission, not just money. You bring excellence because you're working for an audience of one. You don't compare yourself to others because you're secure in your unique design. You persevere through challenges because you've renewed your mind about the purpose of difficulty. In your spiritual life, renewed thinking takes you from duty to delight. Prayer becomes conversation, not chore. Scripture becomes life-giving, not legalistic. Worship becomes authentic, not automatic. You experience God's presence because you're thinking His thoughts after Him. Second, you develop spiritual immunity. A renewed mind is like a spiritual immune system. It identifies and rejects toxic thoughts before they can take root. When negative thoughts come, and they will, you recognize them quickly and counter them with truth. When the world's patterns pressure you, you resist because you're no longer conformed to them. You're not perfect, but you're no longer passive. You're actively engaged in protecting your thought life. Third, you access supernatural peace. Paul writes elsewhere that the peace of God guards our hearts and minds. But this peace isn't available to an unrenewed mind. When you're thinking according to worldly patterns, worry, fear, control, scarcity, peace is impossible. But when you renew your mind with truth, trust, faith, surrender, abundance, peace becomes your default state. Not because your circumstances improved, but because your thinking changed. Fourth, you step into purpose with clarity. So many people struggle with direction because their minds are cluttered with confusion. Renewed thinking brings focus. You stop chasing every opportunity and start pursuing your calling. You stop living for approval and start living for assignment. You understand that you weren't created to be like everyone else. You were created to fulfill a specific purpose that only you can fulfill. Fifth, You become a force for transformation in others' lives. When you're being transformed by renewed thinking, you can't help but influence those around you. Not through preaching, but through presence. Your changed perspective changes conversation. Your renewed thinking introduces new possibilities to people trapped in old patterns. You become living proof that transformation is possible. And that's the most powerful message you can share. The hidden power unleashed through mind renewal is this: you become who you were always meant to be. Not a better version of the default you, but the transformed you, the you that God envisioned when He created you with purpose and potential. And that version of you is capable of things the old you could never imagine. Practical steps to renew your mind. Understanding the concept is powerful, but application is where transformation happens. So, how do you actually renew your mind? How do you take this principle and make it practice? Here are concrete, actionable steps. Step 1. Saturate your mind with Scripture. This is non-negotiable. You cannot renew your mind with truth if you're not consuming truth. The Bible isn't just a book of information. It's the primary tool for transformation. As Hebrews 4:12 says, the Word of God is living and active, penetrating and transforming. But here's the key. It's not about how much you read, but how deeply you absorb. 5 minutes of meditative reading where you really think about what you're reading is more powerful than 30 minutes of speed reading. Read slowly, ask questions, personalize the passage, memorize key verses. Let Scripture shape your thoughts about yourself, God, others, and life. Step 2. Practice thought awareness. You can't change what you don't notice. Start paying attention to your thoughts. Most people go through entire days on mental autopilot, never questioning the thoughts running through their minds. Become an observer of your thinking. When negative thoughts arise, don't just accept them, examine them. Where did this thought come from? Is it true? Does it align with God's truth? Paul said to take every thought captive. That's active engagement. When a thought enters your mind, you have the authority to evaluate it and decide whether to accept or reject it. Not every thought that pops into your head deserves to stay there. Step 3. Replace lies with truth. Awareness alone isn't enough. You must actively replace wrong thinking with right thinking. When you catch yourself thinking, I'm worthless, immediately counter it with truth. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. When you think, this will never change, counter it with, God is working all things together for good. This isn't positive thinking, it's truth thinking. You're not making things up. You're aligning your thoughts with God's revealed truth. Write down the recurring negative thoughts you struggle with, then write down the biblical truth that counters each one. Speak these truths out loud. Repetition is how neural pathways are built. Step 4. Guard the gates of your mind. What you consume shapes how you think. If you're filling your mind with toxic content, negative news, gossipy conversations, media that glorifies everything God condemns, you cannot expect to have a renewed mind. Paul says whatever is true, noble, right, pure, lovely, admirable, think about such things. That's not just what to think about, it's also what to allow into your mind. Audit your inputs. What are you watching? What are you reading? What music are you listening to? Who are you spending time with? What social media are you scrolling? All of these are programming your mind. If you're serious about renewal, you must be strategic about what you allow in. Step 5. Engage in spiritual disciplines: prayer, worship, fasting, solitude, fellowship. These aren't religious obligations. They're tools for mind renewal. Prayer isn't just asking for things, it's aligning your mind with God's. Worship isn't just singing, it's redirecting your focus from problems to God's greatness. Fasting isn't just skipping meals, it's breaking the power of physical appetites over your thinking. Solitude isn't just being alone, it's creating space to hear God above the noise. These disciplines create the conditions for renewal. They pull you out of the world's patterns and into God's presence, where your mind can be recalibrated. Step 6. Practice gratitude and praise. Few things renew your mind faster than gratitude. When you intentionally focus on what you're grateful for, you can't simultaneously dwell on negativity. Start and end each day naming specific things you're thankful for. When challenges come, Practice finding something to praise God for in the midst of it. This isn't denial, it's reframing your perspective. Step 7. Surround yourself with truth speakers. You become like the people you spend the most time with. If you're surrounded by negative, complaining, faithless people, their thinking will influence yours. Find people who think differently, people who speak faith, who encourage, who challenge you to grow. Join a community where renewed thinking is normal, not strange. Step 8. Be patient and persistent. Mind renewal doesn't happen overnight. Remember, you're rewiring years or decades of thought patterns. There will be setbacks. Old thoughts will resurface. Don't be discouraged. Transformation is a process. Celebrate small victories. Notice subtle shifts. Keep going. The compound effect of daily renewal is profound. The key to all of these steps is consistency. You don't renew your mind in occasional intensive moments. You renew it through daily, moment-by-moment choices to think differently. Overcoming obstacles, let's be honest. Renewing your mind sounds great in theory, but in practice, you'll face obstacles. Knowing what to expect and how to overcome these challenges will help you stay the course. Obstacle 1. The pull of old patterns. Your old ways of thinking are familiar and comfortable. They're neural superhighways. New thinking feels awkward and requires effort. The temptation will be to default back to what's easy. Overcome this by remembering that discomfort is a sign of growth, not failure. Just as building physical muscle requires resistance, building new mental patterns requires pushing through the discomfort of change. Obstacle 2. Lack of immediate results. We live in an instant gratification culture, and when you start renewing your mind, you might not see dramatic changes right away. This can lead to discouragement. Remember that transformation is happening beneath the surface before it becomes visible externally. Trust the process. The farmer plants seeds and waits with confidence, knowing that invisible growth is happening underground before the harvest appears. Obstacle 3. Isolation. If you're trying to renew your mind alone without community and accountability, you're making it much harder than it needs to be. The enemy wants you isolated because isolated people are vulnerable. Find at least one other person who can encourage you, pray with you, and speak truth to you when you're struggling. Transformation is a community project. Obstacle 4. Spiritual opposition. Here's what many people don't realize. When you start renewing your mind, you become a threat to the enemy's plans. Expect opposition, expect distraction, expect increased temptation. This isn't a sign you're doing something wrong. It's confirmation you're doing something right. Stand firm in spiritual armor, recognizing that this battle is spiritual and must be fought with spiritual weapons. Obstacle 5. Past failures. Maybe you've tried to change your thinking before and failed. That history can create doubt that this time will be any different. Here's the truth. Every day is a new opportunity. Past failures don't determine future outcomes. What's different this time is that you're approaching it with biblical understanding and God's power, not just willpower. The key to overcoming all these obstacles is to fix your eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of your faith. Keep your ultimate focus on Him, not on the difficulty of the process. When it gets hard, and it will, remember why you started. Remember the hidden power that's being unleashed. Remember that God who began a good work in you will carry it to completion. Conclusion. Your transformation starts today. We've covered a lot of ground together, but let's bring it all back to the core truth. There is hidden power inside you, and it's accessed through the renewing of your mind. You don't have to stay stuck in patterns that limit you. You don't have to remain conformed to a world that doesn't know your purpose. You don't have to accept that this is just how I am. Transformation is available, not someday today, not through massive external changes, through daily internal renewal. The life you long for, the peace, the purpose, the power, the joy, it's all connected to your thought life. As your mind is renewed, everything else begins to align. Your behavior changes because your beliefs change. Your relationships improve because your perspective improves. Your future opens up because your thinking expands. But here's what you must understand. This transformation won't happen passively. You must actively engage in the process of renewal. You must be intentional about what you allow into your mind and what you dwell on. You must consistently replace lies with truth. You must guard your thought life as your most valuable possession because it is. Today can be day one of a completely different trajectory for your life. Not because your circumstances will magically change, but because you will change. And when you change, everything changes. So here's my challenge to you. Start today. Choose one practical step we discussed and implement it immediately. Maybe it's memorizing one verse that counters your most persistent negative thought. Maybe it's turning off the news and turning on worship music. Maybe it's reaching out to someone who can walk this journey with you. Don't wait until you feel ready. Don't wait until conditions are perfect. Don't wait until you understand everything. Start where you are with what you have. Take one step toward renewed thinking today, and tomorrow take another. Let the compound effect of daily renewal transform your life from the inside out. Remember Paul's promise, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Not might be, not could be, will be. It's not a suggestion, it's a guarantee. When you renew your mind according to God's truth, transformation flows. The hidden power is real. It's inside you right now, and it's waiting to be unleashed through the simple but profound practice of renewing your mind. Your transformation doesn't start with changing everything around you. It starts with changing one thing inside you, your thinking. What would your life look like 1 year from now if you committed to daily mind renewal? What relationships would be healed? What habits would be broken? What dreams would be pursued? What peace would be experienced? What purpose would be fulfilled? There's only one way to find out. Begin today. Be transformed. Renew your mind. The hidden power is yours. Will you activate it?